King Horik is a moron. He's egotistical, he's hypocritical, he has no sense of strategy, and he needs to die. That's all there is to it. King Horik, at least King Egbert. I know we're supposed to be rooting for Ragnar, but at least King Egbert doesn't have allies who constantly screw him over. Ragnar is constantly getting undermined by the people who are supposed to be helping him. Especially King Horik. Good God, is he stupid. So this episode of Vikings was, right off the bat, this was probably the worst episode of the season, but I am not saying that like the episode is bad. Worst was probably not the right word to use. It is the least good, because I still recommend this episode. But in terms of accomplishing anything for the overall arc of the season, and in terms of actually moving the story forward, and in terms of character interaction, this is probably the least eventful, or one of the least eventful. Because not really a whole lot of new ground gets covered in terms of all that. It's just kind of getting back on track. And really the only event that moves the story forward comes at the very end, and as you can probably tell by my reaction, it's not exactly a happy event. So yeah, not really a whole lot happened in this episode, but it still keeps your attention with the interactions in character. Because, like I said, these are fascinating characters, and you do like watching them, you do like seeing them interact, you like seeing the relative historical accuracy of this show, you like seeing the production design of this show. This show, even when it was first starting out, had gorgeous set and costume design. And the locations are just beautiful. I never doubted for a second that we were in Scandinavia, or we were in Wessex. So yeah, that's all those positives remain positive here. It's just, like I said, the biggest problem with this episode is that it doesn't really have a large effect on the overarching story. What happens basically is Ragnar, King Horik, and Earl Lagatha finally set sail for their second attempt to raid Wessex. And King Horik is continuing to stress that, Ragnar is not greater than me, he is not greater than Lagatha, but mostly he's not greater than me. So he's trying to convince everyone that Ragnar is his equal, which we know he's not. Not morally, not in terms of being a warrior. Oh, God. I'm sorry, I'm really starting to hate King Horik. Meanwhile, in the B story, in Wessex, we see King Egbert continuing to rally allies, continuing to gain support in preparation for another raid by the Northmen. And what I really like about the sections in Wessex in this show is that the characters and the acting and the authenticity are strong enough to where it could be in its own show. You could have easily called this show, at least based on this season, you could have easily called this show, I don't know, Englishmen or Wessex, and had the show be about King Egbert, because it really is that strong. The segments in England are really that strong, and really that fit to stand on their own. It doesn't feel like a B plot. It feels just as integral as the main plot with all the Vikings. But let's just say less not quite as strong is Floki this time around. Floki has gotten gradually weaker as the season has gone on, as the entire show has gone on, and I still like Floki, but like I said in the previous episode, I believe, his rift with Ragnar was poorly established, if it was established at all. It they didn't set up any kind of spite he had for Ragnar. The first we've heard of this growing rift, or at least to my memory, is Floki not wanting to get Ragnar's blessing for his wedding. Okay, well, why does that now extend to him wanting to ride on the ship with King Horik instead of King Ragnar? Why, or instead of Earl Ragnar? Why does he now have this spite? What has Ragnar done to wrong him? I mean, did he not say thank you for all the ships? Something, please. Please, give me something as to why I should believe this growing rift between them, because this would be a lot more effective if we knew why. But that's the only nagging problem, because what I said earlier about this not really affecting the overall story, you don't really notice that until the end. I mean, when I was done watching this episode, let me put it this way. When I was watching this episode, I was enjoying it. I was not bored in the slightest. But the thing is, when I was done watching the episode, I said to myself, what got accomplished? And that's when it really dawned on me how little happened in this episode relative to a lot of other episodes of this show. Because really all that happened was King Egbert gained a new ally in this princess, this very trashy princess, and also Ragnar, Horik, and Lagatha sailed to Wessex again. That's it. Oh, and Ragnar had another baby. That's one thing that I will give them credit for, is that they finally introduced, I believe, Ivar the Boneless. I think that's his name. But Ivar the Boneless, who is an actual historic figure, and at this point he's just a baby. My guess is that they're probably going to do another time jump. But what was interesting, and what actually had me kind of conflicted on Ragnar's character, was when it was revealed that due to a weakness in his legs, hence why they call him Ivar the Boneless, this kid, everyone is telling Ragnar's wife that this kid is never going to walk. Why don't you put him out of his misery? What use can he be to society with this deformity, with this weakness? Because the Vikings don't exactly have a way of life that supports the handicapped. I mean, we've seen so far that these guys value good, hard-working guys, and you can't really work hard if you can't walk. Or you can't really work hard in the way that the Vikings want you to if you can't walk. Sad, but true. So the thing that had me conflicted was Ragnar actually takes this kid in the morning. He takes this kid outside and leaves him there. And about 5 seconds later, his wife sneaks up behind him and returns the kid to her home. Now, when I first saw this, I was thinking, no, please, no, don't do this. You are going to completely destroy any likability you have for Ragnar. But honestly, after thinking about it, and thinking about the times in which this show takes place, I did not end up hating Ragnar, and I will tell you why. They did include a few scenes beforehand, beautifully acted by Travis Fimmel, where you can clearly see this very painful conflict that he has to deal with. This very painful choice as to whether or not he gets rid of the kid, as to what he would do if he kept it, as to what the consequences would be if he got rid of it. And to be able to convey all that with minimal dialogue is a real credit to Fimmel's acting. And it further added to my initial surprise that I've never heard of this guy before. I've never seen this guy in anything before. I know he's acted in other in other movies and TV shows, but I've never seen any of his work. But he does a good job here, and that's what counts. Everyone does a good job here. Catherine Winnick still does a good job. Donald Logue, even though I don't like his character, still does a decent job. In retrospect, I can see why he was cast as Harvey Bullock in Gotham, in the new Gotham show. If that means his character might get killed off on Vikings, I'm all for that. Now, granted, I don't know actually if his character is a real historic figure, or whether or not he dies, so on and so forth. I am wholeheartedly admitting my ignorance on this subject matter. I do not know nearly as much about Viking culture or real Viking figures as I would like, which adds to another point of initial surprise for me as to why I like this show so much, as unfamiliar as I am with Vikings. But like I said, this episode was solid. You will probably like this episode while you were watching it. I liked it while I was watching it, because these characters are fascinating enough, and there's enough conflict here to keep your attention with Ivar the Boneless and Ragnar finally getting another raid together, and like I said, the stuff in England strong enough to support its own show. But really, what hold this episode back in comparison to other episodes is the poor establishment of Floki's rift with Ragnar, B the retrospective of one finding out that this episode doesn't really accomplish a whole lot in the grand scheme of things. But it doesn't feel padded. Like I said, it will keep your interest. And really, that's one of the biggest compliments you can give a TV show, is if it grabs your attention and keeps said attention. And this does. I mean, in spite of its notable flaws, you will still be interested. The acting is still good enough. I shouldn't even say good enough. The acting is still very, very accomplished. Again, from a bunch of people I've never heard of. I mean, back in season 1, the only cast member of the show that I had any knowledge of was Gabriel Byrne. So for these other actors to win me over is obviously a real testament to their very, very believable capabilities as actors. But yeah, the performances are solid. The production design is still fantastic, and probably my favorite sequence was the very epic scene where you see all three of the Viking allies, Ragnar, Lagertha, and King Horik, sail with all of their ships toward Wessex. They depart from Kattegat and sail toward Wessex. Except it's not really this big grandiose orchestral score. It's more kind of this very somber. It's a much more somber musical choice. And what I like about that and what it brings to the overall scene is this dawning suspicion that it's getting less and less likely for these Vikings to actually come back from their raids. Their enemy is mobilizing. King Egbert is not an idiot. It's not like he's just been sitting there waiting for the Vikings to come. So the Northmen do not have nearly as easy a time fighting their enemies as they did when they raided in season 1. So just that bittersweet quality that music added to that scene, coupled with, again, the fantastic production design, was really what won me over and said, I really like this episode, despite again its flaws. But yeah, good episode. Does it have problems? Yeah. Is it my favorite episode of the season? Not remotely. But again, you had to have one they say you have to have at least one bad one bad thing in a group, or they say every actor has a bad performance. Okay, well, in theory, they say that at least once a season you have an episode, you have at least one episode that doesn't really live up to the others. If this is the worst that this season has to offer, then I'm really looking forward to to the to the other episodes this season. If the worst they have to offer is still pretty good. So yeah, like I said, feel free to leave comments and watch this show. It needs more viewers.